frustrating because I literally every day I was fighting writers, directors, not directors, I'm sorry, network, sometimes fellow actor.
Malcolm-Jamal Warner once confessed in an old interview. The words were simple, yet they were a window into the hidden struggles behind the cheerful face of young Theo Huxtable. They offered a rare glimpse into the quiet pressures and personal disputes that the public rarely sees. The television icon, Malcolm-Jamal Warner, beloved as Theo Huxtable from The Cosby Show, has died at 54 in a drowning incident. The news shocked the world, which mourned his passing. However, beneath the public persona and the smile that became a symbol of American television, Warner carried a private weight of sorrow. One can't help but wonder if, in his final moments, he reflected on his 4-decade career. A journey marked not just by public adoration, but also by deep, painful rifts with others. Names etched into his memory like wounds that never fully healed. They were colleagues he struggled with, and relationships scarred by conflict that could never be repaired. 7 names, 7 narratives, each representing a missed opportunity and a profound lesson in both his professional and personal life. The burning question remains: who were these individuals, and why did Warner admit he simply couldn't work with them? Don't miss out. Subscribe to the channel now to uncover the untold story behind the scenes. Eddie Griffin. When comedy masks inner turmoil. After The Cosby Show concluded its run in 1992, Malcolm-Jamal Warner was a household name. But the pressure to forge a new identity quickly led him to another sitcom venture. In 1996, Malcolm and Eddie premiered on UPN, bringing together Malcolm and comedian Eddie Griffin in an unexpected partnership. On screen, they played 2 very different young men. Malcolm was serious and disciplined, while Eddie was impulsive and free-spirited. The series ran for 4 seasons, completing 89 episodes, just short of the 100-episode milestone needed for profitable, long-term syndication, a fact that many found unfortunate. Yet, few viewers realized that behind the constant laughter were months of strain, as Malcolm and Eddie frequently found each other unbearable when the cameras were off. During those years, Malcolm embodied the principles of The Cosby Show: professionalism, family values, and positive messaging. Eddie Griffin, by contrast, was a street-wise comedian, channeling the untamed energy of Richard Pryor. Their styles were a stark contrast, like oil and water. Malcolm often raised concerns about the scripts, urging writers to make changes to suit a family audience. Meanwhile, Eddie would often add spontaneous, edgy jokes, some of which were considered inappropriate. The set was a constant source of tension. There were weeks when arguments became so intense that production would be halted and producers had to intervene to restore order. Curiously, despite their differences, Malcolm and Eddie had a tradition. Before each taping, they would join hands and pray. They relied on their shared faith and commitment to the work to keep things from falling apart. On television, viewers saw a seamless duo with perfect comedic timing, unaware of the quiet conflict that existed behind the scenes. In fact, many fans believed that their conflicting personalities were what gave Malcolm and Eddie its unique appeal. But over time, the stress began to take its toll. When the show ended at 89 episodes, rumors circulated that the cancellation wasn't purely a business decision. Some speculated that the network chose to end an artistic partnership that was already full of problems. Malcolm later spoke openly about that time. "We didn't get along at all off camera," he said, "but once the lights came on, the show had to go on." That statement paints a picture of a young actor striving to be professional while navigating deep personal conflict. Eddie Griffin, in retrospect, viewed the situation more lightly. He admitted that both were too young and too different to find common ground. Notably, their relationship healed over time. Years after the series ended, Malcolm and Eddie met at an event, where they embraced tightly and shared a laugh about their difficult past. The story found its conclusion in forgiveness and a belated sense of camaraderie. From another angle, this incident exposes the darker side of the television industry. What audiences see as humor and perfect chemistry can often conceal commercial pressures, creative disagreements, and personal clashes behind the cameras. Malcolm learned that professionalism isn't just about acting, it's also about endurance, patience, and the ability to collaborate even when you can't stand your co-star. Still, some people wonder, had the two found common ground sooner? Could Malcolm and Eddie have surpassed 100 episodes and become the next iconic black sitcom after The Cosby Show? Those unanswered questions remain in the minds of fans. But from his experience with Eddie Griffin, Malcolm emerged wiser, with new insights on ego, the power of prayer and responsibility, and the lasting value of forgiveness. And when it comes to behind the scenes tension, it's difficult to forget another person who was by Malcolm's side from a young age: Carl Anthony Payne Sewell, the on-screen best friend who became a distant presence in real life. What happened between them that transformed a TV friendship on The Cosby Show into a cold, real-life silence? Carl Anthony Payne Tippler. When on-screen friendship turns into real-life distance for audiences. Theo Huxtable and his friend Cockroach were a close, humorous, and beloved pair on The Cosby Show. But behind the screen, the truth was far more complicated. In 1984, when the show's producers were casting roles, Carl Anthony Payne too was a strong contender for the role of Theo. After numerous rounds of auditions, the part ultimately went to 14-year-old Malcolm-Jamal Warner from New Jersey. Carl accepted the supporting role of Walter Cockroach, Bradley, Theo's best friend. While this seemed like a logical choice for the script, in reality, it marked the beginning of subtle friction between two teenage boys who were still coming of age. Throughout 4 seasons, Cockroach appeared in key scenes and helped bring laughter to millions of American homes. However, Malcolm later admitted that he and Carl didn't really get along off-screen. Differences in expectations and screen time likely made it difficult for them to connect. Some sources claim that Carl became frustrated with his smaller role, and tensions peaked when he refused to change his appearance to meet a script requirement, leading to Cockroach's abrupt disappearance after season 4. While the exact details are open to interpretation, the outcome was unmistakable. The beloved on-screen duo became an unfinished memory for Malcolm. This was a particularly challenging experience. On one hand, he had to portray a close friendship with Carl, sharing laughs and camaraderie in front of the camera. On the other, he felt a subtle but constant tension on set. As a teenager lacking the skills to handle such situations, Malcolm chose silence and distance. Each scene became a psychological balancing act, requiring him to perform his role as an actor while concealing the discomfort he felt inside. In hindsight, it wasn't just a falling out with a co-star, it was a lesson in the loneliness that can accompany early success. Time eventually brought both actors maturity. Years later, Malcolm shared that his relationship with Carl had improved. They were able to shake hands and converse without the weight of old resentments. Viewed from a broader perspective, their story reflects the unique pressures of the entertainment industry. Young talents thrust into an environment of competition, comparison, and the fear of being left behind. In many ways, the rift between Malcolm and Carl wasn't purely personal, it was a microcosm of the ruthless dynamics behind the scenes, where every moment is judged and scrutinized. Had they received more support back then, or had youthful egos been less sensitive? Would the result have been different? Perhaps we'll never know. But this story offers a sobering realization: success in television isn't just about talent. It also requires emotional intelligence and the ability to connect with others. And because Malcolm endured those silent wounds, he was better prepared to face an even greater shock later in life: the fall from grace of the mentor he once respected most, Bill Cosby. A blow that wasn't just personal, but social in scale, one that would redefine Malcolm's entire understanding of trust and disappointment. Bill Cosby, the mentor who fell from grace and left a tainted legacy. If Eddie Griffin and Carl Anthony Payne II represented professional conflicts that came and went, the story of Bill Cosby is something entirely different: complex, deeply personal, and permanently woven into the life of Malcolm-Jamal Warner. To Malcolm, Cosby was not just a mentor who launched his career, he was a father figure, the TV dad who shaped his entire youth. For 8 years, from 1984 to 1992, Malcolm grew up under Cosby's guidance, watching The Cosby Show become a cultural phenomenon, attracting over 30 million viewers weekly and turning the Huxtable family into a beloved American icon. At that time, no one had more influence on Malcolm than Bill Cosby, but that's precisely why Cosby's downfall after dozens of sexual assault allegations left such a deep emotional scar. In 2018, Cosby was convicted, only for the verdict to be overturned in 2021 due to legal issues. Regardless of the legal outcome, the flood of accusations and the public outrage ended his career. Malcolm admitted that hearing and reading the accusations caused excruciating pain. It wasn't just the fall of a hero, it was the collapse of a legacy in which his own identity and career had been so tightly intertwined. TV networks removed The Cosby Show from circulation. Syndication royalties vanished. Hopes for a reboot or a reunion were permanently cancelled. If not for all this, Malcolm once said with a hint of bitter humor, "We all could have made a lot of money from a revival." Half joking and half heartbroken. His words reflected the disillusionment of someone whose youth was tied to a now shunned masterpiece. Malcolm's response to the Cosby scandal was marked by inner conflict. He couldn't deny the man's impact on his life, nor could he erase the fond memories of a show that once elevated black representation on television. At the same time, he could not justify or defend the alleged actions. "I can't excuse him," Malcolm said, "but I also can't fully turn my back on him." That statement captures a profound emotional struggle: gratitude versus grief, reverence for the legacy versus heartbreak over the truth. Perhaps the real tragedy for Malcolm isn't just the scandal itself, but the painful realization that someone capable of immense social good was also capable of immense personal harm. More broadly, the Bill Cosby scandal wasn't just a personal reckoning for Malcolm-Jamal Warner, it was a cultural trauma for an entire community. The Cosby Show had once been a symbol of pride for Black America, paving the way for countless other family-centered shows featuring African-American casts. Cosby's fall forced viewers to ask, can an artistic legacy be separated from personal misconduct? And how do those closely tied to that legacy, like Malcolm, navigate their own identities when the icon they once stood beside is now disgraced? There are no simple answers, only individual paths through collective grief. For Malcolm, that path seems to be one of quiet nuance, honoring the past without endorsing the flaws, acknowledging disappointment without giving in to condemnation. In the end, the Bill Cosby chapter in Malcolm-Jamal Warner's life remains both a golden memory and a long shadow, a mixture of triumph and tragedy. Tracee Ellis Ross, a career cut short, a lingering regret. When Read Between the Lines premiered on BT in 2011, many viewers felt this could be the turning point that brought Malcolm-Jamal Warner back to the center of American television. In the series, he played Dr. Alex Reed, a psychologist, while Tracee Ellis Ross portrayed his wife, Carla Reed, a sharp and witty college professor. Together, they embodied a modern, relatable Black family of intellect and warmth. Throughout its first season, the show earned stable ratings, favorable reviews, and the on-screen chemistry between Warner and Ross was considered the heart of the series. Some critics even predicted that the Reeds could become a new iconic TV couple, following in the footsteps of the Huxtables from The Cosby Show. But just as the show was gaining momentum, Tracee Ellis Ross abruptly announced her departure before the second season. Her exit came as a shock, especially since she had been positioned as a co-lead alongside Malcolm. With her gone, the script had to be completely rewritten. Carla's character was written off as having taken a job in another city, leaving Alex to handle parenting and marriage long distance. Warner, who had hoped the series would be his next major success after his youth career, was forced to carry the show on his own, taking on the dual role of lead actor and producer. But the spark was gone. Read Between the Lines stalled and only reappeared in 2015 on a different network, only to be quietly canceled soon after. The numbers told the story. From promising long-term potential to a short-lived project with barely 2 seasons and a handful of episodes. For Malcolm, Tracee's exit wasn't just about losing a co-star, it was the emotional weight of having a creative partner suddenly step away, leaving him to shoulder a heavy responsibility alone. In rare interviews, he never blamed Tracy, he maintained his respect for her, but between the lines was an unmistakable sadness. He once compared making a long-running series to building a family. When one key member leaves, the entire structure is shaken. Read between the lines was Warner's attempt to reintroduce himself to audiences as a mature man. And Tracy was an irreplaceable part of that vision. Her absence didn't just change the show. It left him wondering what could have been if they had faced the production challenges together. On a broader scale, the story reflects the harsh reality of television success. It depends not just on good scripts or acting talent, but also on personal decisions. Tracy had her reasons, new opportunities, career shifts, and stepping away from a project may have been her way of preserving her artistic path. While Malcolm understood that, being left behind in a promising but unfinished journey remained painful. It wasn't just losing a role that worked. It was a metaphor for how fragile professional alliances can be. From that experience, Malcolm likely learned a difficult truth. Not all professional connections, no matter how strong, are meant to last. He held on to his respect for Tracy, but was forced to become more resilient, continuing the journey with one less anchor. And the lingering question remains, had Tracy stayed? Could Read Between the Lines have become the next great black family sitcom, or would it have still faced unavoidable obstacles? The wounds from this unfinished chapter made Malcolm more acutely aware of how fragile trust can be in the entertainment world, and that collaborations often only last for a single stretch of the road. But not all professional tensions end with bittersweet goodbyes. Some grow heavier with personal and creative clashes, making reconciliation almost impossible. Such was the case with another co-star, someone who had once shared a relationship with Malcolm off-screen but ended up leaving more distance than connection. Her name, Karen Melina White. Karen Melina White. Quiet clashes between love and work. Among Malcolm-Jamal Warner's longtime collaborators, Karen Melina White holds a unique place. She not only appeared on The Cosby Show as Charmaine Brown, Pam's best friend, but later reunited with Warner on Malcolm and Eddie. Beyond their professional ties, the two shared a romantic relationship that lasted 7 years, a significant period for two actors who came up through television together. Their combination of professional camaraderie and personal affection seemed like a strong foundation that could sustain them both through the ups and downs of the industry. Yet when love and work walk hand in hand, the smallest friction can leave lasting marks. And in this case, those frictions became silent conflicts. In the early days, Karen's presence offered Malcolm a sense of stability. After the massive success of The Cosby Show, he entered a period of professional uncertainty, trying to redefine his place in the industry. Karen was both a scene partner who understood the pressure and a personal support system. But as they worked side by side, cracks began to show. On Malcolm and Eddie, Karen joined as a supporting cast member while Warner took on the central role and producer responsibilities. That level of responsibility made him more demanding on set, and sometimes that strictness spilled into his interactions with Karen. For her, those critiques could feel less like professional notes and more like personal pressure from a partner. No open conflicts ever broke out, but the silence between them gradually grew heavier. Eventually, their romantic relationship ended quietly, without tabloid drama or public statements. Still, insiders acknowledged that blending love and work had made the set an emotionally fragile space. Scenes were filmed to completion, but beneath the surface lingered avoided glances and unspoken tension. For Warner, it may have been one of his most emotionally complex challenges, trying to preserve a romantic connection while remaining professionally focused, ultimately failing to sustain either. On a broader level, the story of Warner and Karen Melina White reflects a common challenge in the entertainment world, where the line between personal and professional life is razor thin. When two people are both lovers and co-workers, even small disagreements can be magnified. And when the relationship ends, the impact isn't just emotional. it directly affects their ability to work together. Their story serves as a reminder that closeness doesn't always translate into harmony. Sometimes it creates unseen pressures that make continued collaboration nearly impossible. Perhaps because of that, Warner became more private in later years, less inclined to speak publicly about his personal life and more careful to keep it separate from his professional environment. But one question still lingers for fans. Had they drawn clearer boundaries between love and work? Could Malcolm and Karen have become a couple that was not only captivating on screen, but also lasting off it? His experience with Karen Melina White remains a personal reminder that in a career like his, the boundary between personal connection and professional discipline must be carefully protected. The production team of Malcolm and Eddie, UPN. If Malcolm-Jamal Warner's clashes with Eddie Griffin stemmed from contrasting performance styles, then another key conflict in his career came from behind the scenes, specifically with the writing and production team of Malcolm and Eddie, which aired on the UPN network. When the series premiered in 1996, Warner stepped into the dual role of lead actor and co-producer. After the phenomenal success of The Cosby Show, he was driven by a desire to create a sitcom that would build upon that legacy, portraying positive, multi-dimensional representations of Black life on television. On the other side, however, UPN, a new network at the time, sought quick laughs, willing to rely on predictable formulas and broad humor to attract a mainstream audience. This clash of visions turned the Malcolm and Eddie set into a silent battleground. Warner admitted in an interview that he was constantly fighting with the writers, producers, and even the studio to preserve the show's creative direction. For him, a sitcom wasn't just about short-term laughs. It had to deliver messages, reflect values, and carry forward the impact The Cosby Show had on millions of American families. But in Hollywood, even a star's voice often isn't strong enough to override the bottom-line priorities of an entire production team. The result was a show that found moderate success, 4 seasons and 89 episodes, but stopped just short of the 100-episode milestone that would have qualified it for long-term syndication and steady revenue. For Warner, this was a bitter disappointment. He had come so close to creating a new cultural landmark only to watch it fall short. He once remarked that the show's early termination and absence from rerun cycles were clear signs of what happens when artistic ideals clash with commercial realities. From multiple perspectives, it's difficult to fault UPN, a small network at the time, for pursuing short-term profitability. Meanwhile, Warner placed his hopes in long-term cultural impact, but the creative disconnect made it difficult for him to work comfortably with the production team. Once again, the underlying lesson emerged: television is an industry where dreams must constantly negotiate with spreadsheets. And in that negotiation, the artist doesn't always win. Could Malcolm and Eddie have reached iconic status if Warner had compromised more? Or would that compromise have cost him the artistic integrity he so fiercely defended? That question still hangs in the air. Regina King. A broken love and an unspoken wound. Among the names that left the deepest emotional scars in Malcolm-Jamal Warner's life, Regina King holds a special place. She wasn't a co-star on screen, but she was a longtime friend who later became his short-lived partner. At the time, Regina King was already a celebrated actress, transitioning from television to film and eventually earning an Oscar. Meanwhile, Malcolm, still searching for stability after The Cosby Show, thought he had found both a personal anchor and the chance to build a lasting family. They publicly began dating in 2011, and as two prominent Black figures in the industry, many fans hoped for a happy ending. But on February 14, 2013, Valentine's Day, a moment usually tied to roses and promises, Warner chose to end the relationship. In an interview with TFAB.com, Regina King recalled the shock of being left on such a symbolic day. She received a bouquet of flowers from Malcolm with a note that read, "I still love you." But that only deepened the pain. "I threw those flowers in the trash," Regina said. "And when he got angry, all I could say was, 'Get out.'" While she never named Malcolm directly, the context and timing left little doubt about who she was referring to. For Malcolm, the real reason behind the breakup was never publicly shared. He chose silence, a response that reflected both discretion and perhaps a lingering sense of guilt. Perhaps he felt the relationship had run its course, or that professional pressure and diverging life paths had gradually pulled them apart. Still, choosing Valentine's Day to end a deep relationship left many questioning his sensitivity, revealing not just poor timing, but perhaps his own confusion in handling personal matters. On Regina's side, the disappointment was clear. Their long-standing friendship and deep trust were severely shaken. After the breakup, she tried to reassure the public with a composed message. Things happen in life. You move on, an effort to maintain her image and avoid reopening old wounds. But her tone still hinted at emotional bruises that hadn't fully healed. For Regina King, the end of her relationship with Malcolm didn't just mean losing a partner, but also a confidant she had once trusted completely. On a broader level, the story underscores the fragility of relationships in the entertainment world, where career pressure, media spotlight, and public expectations often make love even more precarious. It also reveals that even mature, successful individuals can struggle with how to maintain or end a relationship gracefully. One can't help but wonder, had Malcolm chosen a different approach? Slower, gentler, might the pain have been less intense? For Warner, this experience didn't just leave regret, it solidified his later decision to lead a more private personal life. He began keeping his romantic relationships away from public view, limiting media exposure, perhaps as a form of self-protection, not only for himself but also for those close to him. Yet, whether he likes it or not, Regina King's name has become part of the list of people he finds difficult to collaborate with, not due to professional conflict, but because the emotional wound runs too deep. And just as the loss of love still lingered, Warner would soon face another challenge: the difficult balancing act of artistic collaboration, where creative ideals often collide with commercial demands. That was the story behind his experience with the production team of Malcolm and Eddie, a project he poured his heart into only to see it end unfinished. Malcolm-Jamal Warner's journey stands as a testament to the fragile line between the spotlight and the shadows, between success and emotional scars. The 7 names mentioned are not merely former colleagues he found difficult to work with. They are mirrors reflecting different chapters of his life where ego, artistic ideals, and personal love collided, leaving behind marks that aren't easily erased. Through each relationship, Malcolm experienced both loss and growth, ultimately choosing silence and gratitude for what remained. Perhaps that became his final philosophy: to forgive more, to resent less, and to live kindly with himself most of all. If you're drawn to the untold stories behind the spotlight, stay with us, hit follow, share your thoughts, and leave a comment. Should an artist's legacy be measured by their on-screen success or by the lessons they leave behind from the battles no one sees? Don't miss our upcoming episodes, where we continue to uncover the unseen side of the entertainment world.